Welcome back to the Tour Today show. My name is Steve Fleck. Every day there's racing at the Tour. We'll talk about the highs and the lows, the thrills and the spills, and the tragedies and the triumphs at the Tour, aka La Grande Boucle. On each episode of the Tour Today, I will have a special guest on the show with me. Today, I'm pleased to have with me not an industry insider, not a former top racer, not an expert in exercise physiology or any of the other great people I've had on the show with me. I've got a super fan of professional cycling. He's a top age group triathlete, but he loves watching professional cycling. He's also a good friend of mine. Welcome, Dev Paul.
Thank you, Steve, for having me on. It's actually a really cool day to be on because right in the Tour 1984, on this day when they were hovering around the suburbs of Grenoble, I actually saw my first tour live. I was bike touring in Europe and got stopped by the gendarme because the roads were closed off. And that was the first Colombian win on Alpe d'Huez later that day. So that was 36 years ago on roughly this stage.
Wow, that's amazing. Great history. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to watch the Tour Today show, our episode today. Again, we have my good friend and super cycling fan, Dev Paul, alongside with us. You can find me on Twitter. That's a great spot to send questions, input, etc. You can find me at Steve Fleck. Well, today it was stage 16, Dev, and the winner was Leonard Kamna from the Bora-Hansgrohe team. Finally a win for Bora-Hansgrohe. They've tried a number of times with breakaways. Peter Sagan's been in on a number of bunch sprints to try and get a win, but this was actually the first win for Bora-Hansgrohe. There was a huge breakaway that went early on the stage. There was a lot of contenders in this breakaway, but 24 riders went clear, and they were up to 15 minutes up on the GC contenders. Heavyweights in the group, Dev, included Julian Alaphilippe and 3 Ineos riders who are riding for stage wins. Oh my God, quelle surprise. Ineos here to get the GC.
A former Grand Tour winner.
Yes, that's right. Carapaz won the Giro last year. He was a notable in this breakaway group, but we'll get to the Ineos story in a second. Kamna takes the win. Devin, really one of my big stories about this race has been the young riders, and Leonard Kamna, one of that young rider group. He's only 24, had his birthday a couple weeks ago here at the Tour de France and winning the stage. But now to the sort of the extraordinary story for me of the stage is Ineos is now not going for the GC. They are going for stage wins, and we had some extraordinary video towards the end of the stage where Egan Bernal, the defending champion and provisional favorite for the GC at this particular race, riding in the gruppetto with a bunch of sprinters trying to make the time cutoff. What did you make of that?
It's just a brutal sport. You know, there's no room for error if you're feeling off. I mean, look, in the Tour de l'Ain just like a few weeks ago, he was solid in the Dauphiné. He was solid until he took a back seat and stepped out. I think it was on the last day because of purported bad back.
Yep.
You know, his watts per kilo must have been fine to be hanging with Roglic and crew in the Dauphiné. So it's not like he suddenly lost physiology and fitness in like 3.5 weeks.
Right.
So something's up. Maybe too deep in the tank in Colombian training, maybe the wrong training, maybe coming down from altitude. Like who knows? Maybe he's got a bug of some kind. And you know, everyone passed the COVID test yesterday, so I guess it's not bad.
That was good news. That was the big news on the rest day was and everyone talking about the COVID testing and how that was going to pan out. But no more positive tests came up. But back to Bernal, there was a couple of times earlier on, Dev, where there was big digs on some of the earlier climbs in the Tour. He was able to go with Roglic and the other big contenders, but he looked a little on edge. Teeth were gritted, and he looked like he was really straining. That was sort of the early sign to me that he wasn't sort of 100% there. Like
on Peyre-Sourde or a couple of the early stages just out of into the Alpes-Maritimes out of Nice, he was just like uncomfortable, right? He wasn't like smooth like Sepp Kuss or Podkar or Roglic for that matter. Like it just wasn't the same Bernal that we saw last year. You know that climber souplesse. He didn't have he lost his climber souplesse like we used to see in like Pantani and going back to like Lucio Herrera, and these guys are just like smooth, right? Fluid. Frank Schleck for that matter. He had it last year, and it's like there's something up. He's like hunched over, he's pedaling squares, he's keeping up, but there's something up.
Yeah, no, he's not 100% there. And I guess the big story now, and the questions are starting to be asked, is, did Ineos make the right choice here by going all in, with Bernal, leaving Froome and Chris Froome and Geraint Thomas, off of the team? There's 5 Tour de France wins right there. And, going with Bernal, arguably the defending champion. And, one would think, provisionally a favorite for this year, but now the team is like, this is all blown up for them.
Well, I mean, like look at what Thomas did in the Tirreno Adriatico the last few days, and TT'd his way onto the podium behind Simon Yates yesterday. Like on a 10K time trial, just vaulting himself up. I mean, clearly the Giro with 65K of ITT is favorable to him.
Yes.
But, I mean, like, come on, let's keep in mind when he won the Tour, like he toyed around with Dumoulin and Froome in effect on the second last day ITT in 2018. He's like a few seconds behind those guys. He was quite a bit ahead of Roglic. Now, one could argue Roglic was fried, but Thomas can climb, he can TT, like. We're fans, so we love second-guessing director sportifs, right? Like,
of course,
that's our job, right? And like we're fans. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to say directors and team managers have no clue. If we were there, we'd do something else. I think the other factor here is that unfortunately, Nicolas Porto, director sportif at Sky, passing away from a heart attack earlier this year. That got to factor in the prep and the tactics and like everything, the morale, not having those captains on the road. I mean, Bernal's a kid, like he's
23, 24 years old.
As a fan, and we're both parents of people exactly the same as Bernal, and watching him crack and shake his head, and you're like, man, like the pressure this kid's under, and he's just pleading literally with the fans, going, I'm just going to do my best, and whatever, if that's a tour win, if it's stage wins, I'm going to do what I can do. And I think we've heard that from all the young kids we've coached as coaching in youth sport and all that. And he's like a kid thrown into the biggest show on earth, wearing the crown, defending it against like all of this. There's 180 riders who want his back, including his own teammates who are going to the Giro and the Vuelta. So anyway, it's tough watching it, honestly. And I have to say, I'm not in the Ineos Sky fan club from the perspective of I want a different team to win. But just watching him suffer it out, it's like, oh man, like.
Well, I mean, they're kind of paying.
You want him to fight for it.
You do. You want him, and I think he's going to honor the jersey and honor the race by going all the way to Paris. But I mean, you have to wonder about a team like Ineos, who have for the last decade have gone all in on the yellow jersey and the GC. They couldn't care less about stage wins. They couldn't care less about any other jersey. They couldn't care less about anything else going on at the race. They wanted that yellow jersey in Paris. That was their singular and sole effort. And I've always admired other teams that kind of go in, with a bit more open attitude. Like, we're happy to win the green jersey, or we're happy to defend the polka dot, or, go for stage wins. They're just more all around, teams.
Or like Sunweb this year, like, let's create chaos and see when we can do it. And, you're talking about, Bora, they're going for the green with Sagan,
Mhm.
but those guys are just burning the candle at every
Oh,
corner of the peloton. Like this morning, even before it started off, I'm like, it's going to be a 44K TT to get Sagan to
yep.
the points and drop Bennett. And, fingers crossed, they're going to have some guys like Kamna in the front, and maybe they can just sit in and try to take a stage win after that. I never thought that, Sagan would miss it for one, but
Mhm.
that Kamna would have enough. Like Carapaz's attack was violent, and
Mhm.
then Alaphilippe went after him in a typical Alaphilippe burst, and then Alaphilippe just went lights out, like literally 20 seconds after he closed the gap. He
Mhm.
he, he roughly pulled Kamna up, and that was pretty actually impressive from Kamna, given how much work he's had to do to just burn. The day before Paris-Sud, Bora was just like on 180K team time trial, literally ripping the peloton apart. So these guys got to be like at the fried end of the spectrum. They're not sitting around and tapering.
No, it's been all in, and we're going to probably see that tomorrow too. The intermediary sprint comes up at about 40K, and with the tightening up, Dev, in the green
Yeah.
jersey competition, Sam Bennett is still in the lead, but Peter Sagan and Matteo Trentin are kind of breathing down his neck. So I'm expecting it to be fast and furious tomorrow with, as you had said, probably like a team time trial by both Bora and CCC to get to that intermediary sprint as quickly as they can, get the points there, and put Bennett on the back foot, because it's going to be tough for Bennett tomorrow. We're kind of segueing into part two here and the discussion about the stage. Two monstrous mountains, and I think part of Bora's strategy, although it sounds kind of cruel, is to make Sam Bennett finish outside of the time cutoff, and that would put Peter Sagan in the green jersey automatically. I've heard talk of that, online on some of the social threads I've been following.
Yeah, I think it depends on how, like the way I see it is, how far ahead does the breakaway get? Who's in the breakaway? Did the GC guys need to chase the breakaway guys down? How motivated is UAE? Like, if the breakaway is close enough, how motivated is UAE to get Pogacar the stage win and the bonus points on Roglic? Because at 40 seconds down, it's all like boiling down to the Planche de Belfi TT at the end, and
Yep.
Pogacar beat Roglic at the Slovenian National Championships time trial in June. If he gets close enough before, and like as a fan, I want to see the breakaway dangling in front of the GC guys close enough that the GC guys get motivated on the final climb to Maribel tomorrow. And it's 21K at 7.8%. So, like, to put in perspective, Alpe d'Huez is 13K
Yep.
at 8%, right? And so this is like, there can be like major time gains can Jumbo do the same thing that they do on Grand Colombier the other day and
Yes.
just ride like tempo at the front with like 6 guys so no one can make an attack? And if so, then how close is that GC group to the breakaway?
Mm-hmm.
And if those are fast enough, then the gruppetto is, there could be question marks around, what the if the gruppetto makes the time cut. Now, having said that, the ASO is notorious for making exceptions when they
Right.
randomly feel like it.
Yeah, I think Sam Bennett might get a bit of cooperation from the commissaires and the judges if he was to finish a minute or two outside of the time cutoff tomorrow. But as you had said, those are two massively monstrous climbs: the Madeleine tomorrow and the Col de Loze, both about 20 kilometers long. with ramps of 15%, sprinkled throughout the climb. They finish up the Col de Luz, where we were talking about just before we got on camera. They've actually paved a new access road like over the summit, like at the ski area that they're actually going to finish on. Brand new pavement just laid down exclusively for the Tour de France. Now, you've climbed some of the climbs like in that area, Dev, not the Madeleine and not the Col de Luz. What is the terrain like in that area of the French Alps?
I mean, you know what? Like the nice thing about the bad thing as a fan is a lot of the longer climbs aren't actually that steep, right? Like there's stuff in the Jura and the Pyrenees, and definitely in the Vuelta, you see like these insanely steep things. The grades in that part of the Haute Alps are well done for like trucks and cars and all of that. So you get less of like the super duper steep. Let's just look at the Col de Luz, for example. I'm just bringing up the steepest pitches. Like it doesn't get like super duper steep until you get to the very end, right? Like there's a lot of, like 6%, 5%, 8%, and then you get from 17 to 21K. And this is what you were talking about. This is not the normal road, right? This is when you get into the 24 and the 18%.
Yeah.
So I think like realistically, what's going to happen is most of the Haute Alps is reasonably graded enough, at least in my, Galibier, Telegraph, south side, north side of Galibier, Glandon, Croix de Fer. Like these guys are so closely matched. It's really hard to do anything except like the most steepest part. Maybe the steepest part of Galibier, but this 18 to 24% in the last 4K, that's like a game changer on the GC.
And just I wanted to add, this is going to be the highest altitude they've reached. They'll be over 2,300 meters, like at that point, Dev, and that's where like the altitude effect starts to come into play. Like pretty much below 1,500 meters, not a big deal. Once you get past 1,500 meters, and certainly beyond 2,000 meters, there's an altitude effect, and this could impact the outcome for the stage and who is going well at that altitude.
So I have no science to back this, but what I have noticed is you get kind of like the GC guys who can time trial. I mean, like going back to Lance, Indurain, those type of GC guys, the bigger, well, I wouldn't say Lance is big, but, in the context of Quintana or Bernal, I mean, this stage, a normal Bernal, this stage is like built for him, that 18 to 24%. These like super light, sub 130 pound guys seem to do like really well once it gets over 2,000 or 2,300 meters. This is the Henri de Grange point on the Tour. It's not quite as high as Galibier or Telegraph at 2,700, or Stelvio for that matter in Italy, but that's where these like super light guys shine. So, if the breakaway succeeds, it's going to be some guy like that. This would have been in my view, this would have been a chance for Bernal to take back time from Pogačar and Roglic, who are kind of like the bigger TT cat. Like, I guess you wouldn't say that Pogačar is big. He's like 62 kilos, but he's not 57. No. So this would have been the rest of the grades. Like I think most of these top guys, they stay together. It's when we get to the black. Well, for those who look at the Tour contour maps, when you get those black grades, I don't know where it goes black. I think it's 12% and higher.
Yeah, I think 12 and 15 and higher is black on
Yeah, well,
those
this is
grade
18 to
charts.
24. This is
Yeah,
not even,
yeah.
like, I don't know what color you go beyond black in the RGB color scale on a computer, but yeah. Um,
So before we move on, Dev, let's just quickly go over, you and I talked about this before we got on camera, we'll just quickly go over the top 10 sort of on the GC and what we think sort of might happen and how this is going to influence the racing over the next couple of days. So as you had mentioned, Tadej Pogačar, second spot, 40 seconds down on Roglic. And then it's Iran at 134, Miguel Angel Lopez in fourth at 145, Adam Yates in fifth at 203, Richie Porte looking good in sixth at 213, Mikel Landa in seventh at 215, and even going all the way back to Eric Mas in eighth at 315. I mean, these are all possibilities for maybe that last spot on the podium. All those riders going from Iran all the way back to Mas. And I'm sure all of those riders will have that in mind tomorrow, like going into tomorrow's stage.
Can I comment as a fan versus anything analytical?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when they get to the 18 to 24% for the last 4K, man, I'd love for Richie Porte to pop himself up the GC. He's put in a few good digs. The guy's won like countless one-day stage races. He's had like amazing performances on the tour, and then he crashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like there's been so many times that Richie's like on fire. He's 35. He's joining Team Sky Ineos next year, so he's going back to his old roots, and he's not going to be a GC guy there. He's hired as a helper.
Yeah.
And I think he's publicly said, like, I'm not going to have the pressure of a GC guy. I'm going to go in and I'm going to help the guys. But yeah, like he's showing like really good power to weight and good form. If he keeps the powder dry all day and just sets in behind like Koos and Van Aert and all the guys who are going to drive the jumbo train before the jumbo train really puts down the hammer with Dumoulin. If Richie keeps quiet and stays well fueled, and Richie's at the smaller end. He's not like the 55 kilo guy, but he's at the smaller end. And I think that when it gets steep like that, he can vault himself past this crew, and the crew in front of him between third and seventh. I think there's 45 seconds spread between all of them.
Yes.
So if he can get a time bonus, and if he can, one of those guys sitting between third and eighth is going to have a bad day. There's always one guy, right?
Yep.
And
we don't wish it on them, but we kind of know that the odds are that it's going to happen.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, as a fan, I'd love if there's some time losses in the top two, just to make the GC more interesting. Because right now I think we're all just sitting around waiting for the final TT, going, okay, is it going to be Jumbo winning it or UAE winning it? And then everyone's fighting for third to seventh. If it's raining on the descent down Madeleine, that, like, we've seen it before when there's rain on descents. Guys don't fuel. They're worried about keeping the bike upright. They're trying to stay warm. It's going to be between 5 and 18 degrees. So look at the top of Madeleine. It's going to be cold. It's not going to be. It's not going to be nice and warm. So some guys will make fueling mistakes in that. They won't be able to get They won't be able to get the Musette or whatever. You throw rain into the equation, and it just changes the whole energy picture. And obviously, as fans, we don't want to see anyone having any mishaps. But just putting the whole mishaps thing aside, it just changes the fueling picture. And 98, Ulrich bonked badly going down Galibier in the rain. Pantani took a rain jacket and Ulrich didn't. And then Ulrich lost the Tour that day. He, a defending champion, he basically lost the Tour on that descent.
Yeah.
on a lighter guy who took a rain jacket.
Yeah. Speaking of mountains, Dev, let's just switch quickly to the KOM competition, the polka dot jersey. That's looking really interesting. It's tightened up dramatically. Benoit Cosnefoy, again, one of the young riders. I think Cosnefoy is only 24. He won the U23 World Road Race Championships a few years ago, but has been in polka dots since the very early stages.
Yeah.
But he has got breathing down his neck. Pierre Roland, Tadej Pogacar, Roglic, Nons Petters, even Mark Hershey, all within a couple of points, of that polka dot jersey. That could be something with the terrain we see. We've got two big mountain stages coming up, then a lumpy stage, and then the time trial. I'm guessing we're going to see a change of lead in the polka dots before the end in Paris.
Hey, Steve, do you know, I actually haven't checked, how many points are allocated to the top of the Madeleine? Because that's the first big climb tomorrow. And, all these guys are going to want to go in the break. Out of those, I think the most motivated outside, Roland's got a strong palmarès, but, Hershey, he could be motivated for another stage win for Sunweb. And he's close enough that, he could take the polka, depending on which podcast you're watching, certain people have been complaining that like the polka dot jersey competition is stupid because the best climber in the tour is usually not winning it. So it's got to be revamped to really reward the best climbers. Having said that, it animates the race. So you got the green jersey, intermediate sprint, ratcheting up the pace early to create a breakaway. It's designed that way. Mm-hmm. Then you got the breakaway, and some of these polka dot dudes are going to try to get in that break, or guys chasing the polka dot are going to try to get in the breakaway to get to the top of Madeleine first. I would say out of that group, if Hershey's in that, none of those guys are going to beat him to the top. I
don't know what the points are, Dev, but it's maximal because it is the Madeleine and the Col de Loze are or category, so HC, so it would be maximum points for the summit of both.
Yeah, so I think I think at the top of Madeleine it flips upside down on the polka dot, and then the question is, can any of those guys I think UAE would be reasonably motivated enough to keep the breakaway close enough that the stage win can go to their GC guy and get the bonus points. Within 18 to 20, they're going to know with the end being 18 to 24%, those breakaway guys, unless they have 10 minutes at the top of Col de Loze, they're going to crack. Yeah, relative to the GC. So I think the GC keeps it the GC group keeps it close enough. So whatever the standings are at the top of Madeleine on the polka dot I think that's tomorrow night's polka dot jersey wearer.
Okay, you heard it here first. I agree with you that the polka dot, I think the ASO and just Grand Tour races in general might want to sort of revamp that because it does seem a little, nothing against Benoit Cosnefoy, but I mean, he got all those points early on, and there was a couple of days where he came in the gruppetto. He had no interest in contesting any other stages, whereas we know that probably the best pure climber, or the two best pure climbers in the race, are Roglic and Pogacar, and he showed that. Pogacar set a record apparently going up the Paris Sword that had dated back to, I think, the days of Lance Armstrong and company.
It was Vino. It was Vino Kurov in 2003 set the record. Lance and Ulrich were chasing Vino on that day further back. Vino Kurov set the record with Iban Mayo from Euskadi. I don't know if you guys remember that. That guy actually had the record up Mount Mont Ventoux. So, in the full-on doped era with, everyone juiced to the gills, Iban Mayo was the Ventoux record holder. And they set the record that day. But, obviously it was much later in the tour. It was like stage 15 or something like that. They had a big tailwind also, or they had a tailwind this year apparently. So anyway, it's interesting to see, like, comparing between eras. I mean, it's hard to compare. You don't know how closely these guys were drafting the motorbikes back then versus now, and the TV cameras and all. Remember a few years ago when Froome and Richie Porte slammed into the back of the TV camera on two, and they're like, hey, well, they slammed in the back of the TV camera. Well, guess what? They're drafting the TV camera. That's what they slammed in the back, right?
They're pretty close. Dev, hate to put you on the spot, but it's prediction time. Who is going to win this in Paris? Who's going to be wearing that yellow jersey when they journey down the Champs-Elysees for the last time?
Well, do you want me to answer from my heart, or you're trying to get me to come up with something that's rational?
No, whatever you like. I'm asking you the question.
All right.
Who's going to win this?
Look, like I think Pogacar is like he's got Roglic's number on most of the sprint finishes. Beat him in the Slovenian TT Nationals. He can climb with him. He can TT with him.
Yeah.
If it's close on Belfi, he's younger too, so he's going to recover faster.
Yep.
But you know what? Like I want to see some magic happen and see somehow magically Richie Porte because of whatever, like maybe those two guys are descending the mountain really fast and they skid off the road and lose, like they stay out. I want them to stay upright. They lose their 40 seconds or whatever, and Richie nails it on Col de Luz tomorrow. But that's just my wishful thinking. He's a former triathlete. Richie joined sport late. He joined from our sport originally. Yep. So hey, just like Lance did, I guess. But
yes.
It'd be cool to see Richie, but it's Tade. I think he's got it.
Yeah, Pogacar is the great unknown, because at 21 we really don't know, how good he is or how far he could go. He's never been in this position, in a Grand Tour race, deep into the race with the pressure, on his back. So we will see. It's going to be a fascinating final few days. Two big mountain stages to come. Kind of a lumpy stage coming up on Friday that could be, a setup for Peter Sagan. Green jersey, I'm thinking maybe. Sagan might have his eyes on that to get some maximum points. And then, of course, the time trial you mentioned on Saturday, the 35, I think it's 38 kilometers, but it's 5 kilometers, massively steep final climb up to a finish there. You've been watching the Tour Today show. My guest today has been my good friend and cycling superfan and aficionado and historian, Dev Paul. Thanks for this, Dev. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. Thanks for doing it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Tomorrow for Stage 17, my guest will be Dr. Jennifer Heitz, who is a professor of kinesiology at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. We'll be talking about the benefits of high-intensity exercise and mental health. I'm Steve Fleck on behalf of the team at Endurance Zone TV. Thank you for watching, and we will see you all back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for the next episode of the Tour Today show.